Hi, I'm Chad. Thanks to everybody. This is one of the cons I look forward to so much during the year. So first things first is to give Matt and JD and Felipe and everybody the props they deserve, because this is great. We love this, right? My name's Chad Calise. I do some stuff with Whimsical. You can call me Whimsical. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about resume hacking, right? And first of all, this audience is very almost has an unfair advantage to get into InfoSec. Why do I care anyway? I've been working in this, and we need more and more people. We need more people that, more diverse audiences that come from different backgrounds, and certainly understanding the kinds of things that you all do and your interests naturally lends itself to kind of the next step and maybe some of the evolution for those of you that are interested in it. And my background, I didn't get into this because I was interested in it. Right, how I meandered into this, it started with some friends who their financial lives were ruined, and about 2007, and that just kind of kept pulling me deeper and deeper and deeper into this stuff. But I wasn't particularly interested in it at first. I really kind of tried to avoid it. A lot of security people, to be honest with you. So this is something that may appeal to some of you, may not. But I'm gonna have a little introduction and tell you how this kind of talk came to be, where this comes from, why you want to listen to this anyway. The old 1-2 and some ideas for that, kind of breaking into, and this could apply not just to InfoSec too. It could be anything else that you might be interested in, is shifting careers. There's a lot of us doing that now, right? Hopefully this is timely and it can be useful to some of you. And then of course some resources that you can put to use. And this is a nice, succinct, I love levity. So this isn't very long. It's dense, and I'll be hanging out in the Discord after for some questions. I've participated in, volunteered at and run these career hacking villages in a lot of the hacker community conferences. Most recently with PancakeSCon. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. It's Leslie Carhart's or Hacks for Pancakes pop-up con that started during quarantine first started, and now it's on its second iteration. And that was a great career hacking village. We had a very, very diverse turnout of folks, all from different, some from development backgrounds, some from more help desk focused backgrounds, some from social sciences and things that you wouldn't think of being well, positioned to make that kind of next, foray into something new, a new chapter for someone. And it's exciting for me selfishly because, I certainly learn from this too. And so I want to share some of the things that, we do in these cons. I've done it at GurCon and DerbyCon, some of the other hacker cons that are out there, but they're becoming more and more common. So if you haven't checked any of these out and you're curious, maybe you don't have any hard plans or anything, but just want to check it. It's worth checking out. Some amazing folks sharing a lot of great experiences that I'm a little envious. I wish I could do this again because I would do it better, thanks to the community, right? And this is the case in point. Mac DevOps, YVR. So the kinds of things that we would do initially in these career hacking villages is like this, like tools, like how can I generate a resume really quickly in a format I want? Maybe I want it in JSON format. Maybe I want, whatever kind of thing you want to do. People don't want to spend a lot of time on this. They want to make it, really portable and have the most value into the future, so they can use it to get through, some of these systems that exist today. And generally that looks something like this, right? It's just a generic, this is Joe Blogs. It's just some person I made up. But they generally kind of have this appearance. And that looks, you can imagine this from the perspective of a hiring manager, right? You can try to, kind of get the idea in your mind of how, if you put a stack of these on the table, they kind of start to look the same, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And this is great too, right? These kind of text-based, very minimal formatting types of resumes or CVs are very, very good for getting through the ATSs or these applicant tracking systems, right? Because they're just looking for keywords, and to get in the gate, just past the gatekeeper, that's important. I don't have a lot of cruft in there or necessarily a lot of narrative. Want to have those core ingredients, the recipe, to make sure that you're kind of, breaching that first toll booth to get in deeper and increase your odds, maximize our odds, right, for doing that. And it's important to understand how these ATS systems actually work. Right. So when a resume hits one of these systems, generally speaking, right, these are larger size organizations, right? It's getting in there with a lot of other ones, and it's doing some initial, right, curating on behalf of the hiring teams, the HR teams and recruitment teams. And they're not even looking at these at this point, right? Once these resumes are processed or these CVs are processed, it's really, there's not any real interaction yet at this point as this goes, right? They divide them into kind of different buckets, and try to optimize their settings for their dashboards are all different, right? Maybe they're looking for, security engineers or marketing analysts or whatever, but the odds of that going into the trash are pretty high. There's just a lot of things kind of stacked against it, right? It's kind of like blackjack. A house is always going to have the odds. And when they look at that cumulatively, these teams, they're looking at something like this. They're looking at a dashboard, and as you can imagine, right, we use dashboards in the worlds that we live in too, right, of different sorts and varieties. And this is interesting because it really takes out a lot of the kind of unswerving punctuality of chance of finding this amazing fit that has been overlooked, or someone that has this background that is complementary. Maybe they don't have some of the core requirements, but and believe it or not, recruiters want to be open to that. I don't know that these tools are necessarily their favorite, because it does limit the pool and those kinds of unicorny types that many of you probably are, right? You could probably do anything you wanted to, right? You could learn anything or unlearn anything you wanted to, and it's really hard to transmit that value at this stage, this first stage, right? Think of this as stage one, the first stage of this kind of, engagement or whatever we think about it in security parlance. And again, like, it's important to keep in mind, like, it depends. It's really important to consider our audience in this, right? So if we're applying, we're interested to work with a smaller team. Maybe it's a startup, maybe it's a nonprofit, maybe it's something else that's smaller. This isn't going to be an issue. There's not going to be some layers of complexity that are required. You're probably going to deal with humans right off the bat. But the mid-size, 70% of the mid-size and almost 100% of the Fortune 500, the larger, behemoth enterprises, they're not touching that with their hands until at least a second stage. And so if we kind of think of this in the context of offensive security, right? Typically, there's an initial breach. It's a two-stage payload generally, kind of thing. There's an initial thing that breaches whatever perimeter device, or someone socially engineered or whatever it is. But we could use this as a pretty decent analogy, right? For that, not that we're attacking these companies to get in there, but in a way, there is a component to this that has to be, intentional and aware of this, because getting in the initial, gate, the initial getting in the wall of the place, getting in the firewall, is pretty easy, right? With these text-based resumes, it's pretty easy to do, right? It doesn't take a whole lot of, it's more form over function, right? And most of us generally have one of these somewhere kicking around, even if it hasn't been updated in a while. But that's important to have that. I mean, I'm not demeaning that. That's still really important to get past that initial, or get that initial foothold, as it were. And this is where most people get hung up. They get past that first gate. But I've heard so many times, I don't get that second call, or this, I don't get that next stage. I have the introductory call with the recruiter, but I don't get through to the hiring manager. And I think that's pretty typical. I think we all have to make a few of those mistakes, right? And this is kind of think of it as like this tool, this initial payload, this initial contact that we create is great for a machine, right? It's really great for a machine, but it's not so great for humans, right? It blends in. It looks like everything else on, say, a hiring manager's desk. So what can we do to get past that? Well, it's build a second stage payload, as it were, right? Build your ATS version, your text-based version that's not fancy, looks like everything else under the sun, and then create one that I certainly have some templates and resources to share with you, right? But make something that's appealing to the eye, to the human side, right? So have that ready for your initial call with that recruiter, that first in the door. Share that second one so they have that to pass on to the hiring manager, who it would be more memorable, right? It's all about making it memorable. What kinds of things make it memorable? Tell the story about the kinds of things you improved at your current role or a past role. Try to put that, it's not going to be perfect or like to the perfect spec, but just talk about the general value. Maybe you improved a workflow and saved some time by 15%. That's awesome, right? That's a gain. That's a net. You amplified something, right? That's cool. What you did and how you did it is okay. But at this stage, most of the audiences that we're going to run into are looking for what value we brought. They want to know something concrete that they can go to their team and say, well, this person, they did this and this and this and this, right? And they can map those kinds of things, those concrete things to their goals, right? Or the challenges that they're trying to solve with personnel. So, and I hope that makes sense. Like if you have a home lab, you're just getting into this InfoSec stuff and this, hacking and all that jazz, talk about the work you're doing in your whole lab, right? Talk about that. Talk about some specific project. Maybe it was, around product security. Maybe it was around compliance and, risk management. It's all relevant here. Find a way to incorporate that into the conversation in this version, right? It's not easy. I know it's not easy. It's a tall order, but if you're active on Hack the Box, try Hack Me, any of that stuff, those badges, that stuff's legit, right? I mean, it's a different sport. This isn't your grandpa's CV or our grandma's job hunting world. It's very different. And the stuff that we do, the initiatives that we can prove have value, right? So it's easy to take that for granted and think, nobody cares about this. They'll care, right? And again, you're looking for an audience that's going to value what you're bringing too. It's a two-way street. It's easy to lose sight of that. But to bring this two-stage payload then to this kind of engagement is just can be a lot more satisfying, because this second, third calls can it's amazing, right? Such a small little tweak like that. And that's not to say don't think that you have to do it this way, right? Because I've done it where I started with the second stage all the way through, and somehow miraculously a human did touch it, right? There's no perfect solution, right? Keep an open mind. I would say that if you're applying for a role and it's been more than 2 or 3 days since it was posted, don't bother. They've already got, probably a pool, but it's something that's been posted, boom, and you're within 15 hours or, the first day or two, awesome, go for it. But if you're conserving your energy and you're really looking and you're to avoid burnout, if it's more than 3, 4, 2, 3 days since it was posted, it's your call, but I would advise whatever. So you go back to this process with your two-stage payload, right? You get in the door and then boom. I would be surprised if your callback rate didn't improve in some way, right? And that's kind of the long and the short of it is keep that in mind, that the machines are going to have eyes on that initial version. And then the human one is almost more valuable, because that's where we have to work a little harder to kind of be able to distinguish ourselves from the pool, right? Of trees and a bunch of trees are all unique, right? But somehow we have to have some color or some snap or something that draws the attention of that team or that hiring team manager. And that's, in a nutshell. I have some cool resources here for you. And I've already uploaded the deck, the slides. So they should be available really soon. And I'm happy to hang out in Discord for a while and answer. It's so weird. This is a little bit different because I usually ask questions as I'm going along, and hopefully you have some for me and hopefully I can answer them. Grateful for your time and your attention.